Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm Zabta Shinwari, Distinguished National Professor, Professor Emeritus in Qaeda University, Islamabad. I'm Fellow Pakistan Academy, Vice President of Islamic World Academy, and UNESCO COMEST remained co-chair and the Fellow of the World Academy of Sciences. What I'm going to talk to you is about the use of modern technologies, call it biotechnology, its promises and perils in ECO food security journey, specifically amid climate change. So when we talk about, the challenges of food security in ECO region, the first one is, and the foremost is climate change. The whole region is experiencing drought, floods, the weather pattern is not, fixed as usual. It has extreme temperature. It has various problems, and because of which, of course, we have food security issues because we cannot grow the crop that we wanted to grow in timely manner. The second issue, the biggest issue, is in specifically low and middle income countries, population growth. Take example of Pakistan. It was 50 years back, somewhere, let's say 100 plus million. Today we are 200, close to 30 million people. So that is another issue. The land is reducing, the population is growing. So how to feed that? Third is, the resource constraints, population growth, climate change, and then poverty. That is one of the major issues that we are facing. So because of this constraint, we cannot provide facilities to our communities that they deserve. Then we talk about loss and waste, because the education literacy rate in these countries are quite low. So there is approximate 25% of the crop is lost while harvesting and then storage. In both places, we lose at least 1/4 of the crop. That is another issue that we need to talk about. Poor infrastructure, we don't have modern machineries, and the people are working with the traditional sort of, both sowing and harvesting and storing. Economic disparities, we either have a high class or a very low class people. Economic-wise, people are we have a middle class, we have a lower middle class, and then they don't have enough resources. So there is economic disparity among this. And the other one is conflict and political instability. Look at the whole region. And majority of the instability and conflict region are the Muslim countries. The recent, just this week, we have problems in Palestine. The innocent people are killed. And then in this situation, how can we ensure the food security? Lack of access to technology is another issue. We don't have modern equipment available for them to either sow the crop or harvest the crop or transport the crop. That's another issue. The ninth one I want to talk to you about is the pests and diseases. Because of this, poverty, because of climate change, we have a variety of pests that eats or that destroys our crops. Various diseases, both fungus, other major pests that destroy the crop, and nutrition insecurity. That is the hunger lot of our women, the food that they eat, that's not having those micro and macronutrients that are required their body to keep them, healthy and able to work. Now, what to do with this? Biotechnology, how can this solve our problem? Number one, the foremost, we have to increase the crop yield, because with this population growth, with all this available land, we cannot, feed our population. So we have to increase it. We have to enhance its nutrition value using the technology so that they can get in their limited food all kind of nutrition, micro and macronutrients that are required for the body. The third one is the resistance to pests and diseases. We have to develop such crops that can resist the pests and diseases. Adaptation to climate change, to drought-tolerant species, cold-tolerant species, salinity-tolerant species, and then reduce environmental impact. Crops with lower water and fertilizer requirement should be developed or engineered so that they can somehow, survive and have better yield. And we have to diversify crops. We have to develop new crop varieties suitable for diverse agroecological zones. Majority of OIC countries have very good, different kind of climate geographical zone that they need specific variety for those areas. Then preservation of biodiversity because of, again, climate change, because of population growth, because of poverty, biodiversity is under stress that we need to somehow, conserve and work on it. Faster breeding and crop improvement. We have to consistently work on our crop genes so that we develop such crop that can survive the extreme environment and temperature. Sustainable agriculture, that's another one. Adaptation to climate change, I already talked about this. So when we talk about sustainable agriculture, we mean precision agriculture and gene editing. We should, with this modern technologies like AI, machine learning, we know when the climate is going to do what with us. So accordingly, we have to perform and we have to develop such varieties that they can work. Now, if I simplify this to you, is the hopes and concerns using modern technology. The hopes are, if we use the technology, we can have increased food security, we can have improved crop resilience that can survive extreme weather, we can enhance nutrition value, we can reduce use of chemical pesticide that will clean our soil, our water, etc. And economic benefit we will get if we do all this. So this is the hopes that if we use modern technology, we hope that we get all this. But the concerns are, there are concerns, and concerns are safety of our, the wild relatives, the wild plants and animals that we have, environmental impact, ethical issues, ownership and control of genetically modified seeds and organisms. This will be in some few companies, the hand of the company. And they may blackmail the, traditional society, indigenous societies, because the indigenous society, now they keep their seeds from one generation to another and they sow it. If they have modern access to the modern seeds and then they don't have their own seed, then they will be sort of a blackmail. The fee that they will be paying, the charge that they will be paying will be huge, and they may not, and there may be consequences of the potentially GM crops on crossbreed with the wild relatives that will also impact the biodiversity. Important is transparency and regulation. There is a world of, have and have not. The rich, the big companies are in the rich countries and they, ask for their terms, they give loans, they give seed, but on their terms. Consumer acceptance, because there are a lot of social media, people are talking about it negatively, so people may not like it. And long-term effects. We don't know with certainty what GM crops do with the, long-term, if we keep it for years and years, for decades, maybe we lose our own traditional resource, irreversible loss may occur. So that is, and finally, that the labeling and traceability. We should ensure, specifically in the country, that whatever we are getting in the market, it is properly labeled, which kind of gene, which kind of vector we are using, and we could trace from where did it come and how it worked. Now, to all this, what to do with the genetically modified organism and biosafety? The first thing is, I will talk about the regulatory framework. There should be internationally acceptable, majority agreeable regulatory framework so that if we feel there are precautionary approach and we could work on that. And that regulatory framework should have inbuilt mechanism to risk assess, to containment, labeling and traceability, they should all be there, and then long-term effect is addressed. These are the challenges and concerns that we have, the environmental impact included. So there are, three things that I'm talking here. Number one, challenges and concerns that we have. Then on the other hand, global perspective. And thirdly, successful GM crops. I'm going to some of the GM crops that are being successfully used. The global perspective is the international agreement, for example, Cartagena Protocol on biosafety. Many countries have signed the protocol, so we should be abiding by that protocol, safe handling and transboundary movement of the GM crops, even in shipment, even if keeping it. Now, some of the examples of GM crops: BT maize in Spain, GM potato in Ireland. When the Ireland potato crop was destroyed by blight resistance, there was a GM potato that saved them, and they had significant good crop available for them. GM sugar beet in Spain that was resistant to herbicide. GM papaya in Canary Island, which was resistant to papaya ring spot. And GM cotton that is grown in many countries, including India, Pakistan, Spain, Portugal. They all, BT cotton, what we call it, that they could survive that pest, etc. Now, the environmental impact of GMOs. Three mainly I'm going to talk to you about. One is gene flow, other is non-target effect, third is biodiversity concerns. The gene flow, when we have this widely available in the field, this may have crossbreeding with wild relatives that may harm in them, and there may be herbicide-resistant transfer, superweed, what we call it. It may become a superweed, and it will be difficult to eliminate it because of the technology. It may be irreversible, so we have concern about this. Then non-target effect. Impact on the beneficial insect. Example was some useful insect that were traveling from North America to Canada, and it is thought that it may have been killed by unintentionally, you call it, by the GM crops. And there are several other examples that can happen. Unintended consequences. It may alter the availability of food resources for wildlife and disrupt the ecological relationship. So in the ecosystem, we may be, having problems. Now, finally, what I'm going to talk to you about biodiversity concern. Monoculture and genetic homogeneity. This will reduce biodiversity by displacing, native plant species and increasing the vulnerability of crop species and pests. So that was another issue. Now, the secondary effects on soil and ecosystem. One is the herbicide use, the other one is the changes in the pest dynamics. Reduced pest pressure due to GMOs may lead to changes in the predator-prey relationship in ecosystem. So we are disturbing the ecosystem that was there for the centuries, for the thousands and millions of years, and with our introduction, we may harm it. It may have irreversible loss. The most important and close to my heart, because of my position with UNESCO, is the ethics that we have World Commission commenced, ethics and social consideration related to GMOs. The most important is the intellectual property rights, because the ownership and patents, the big companies will have the ownership, as I said, and the poor man will have no choice but selling their land and buying the seed. It will be like a gold kind of thing. So that is one issue that we need to understand. And then farmers' right, that the rights of the farmers to save and exchange seed because of terminated technology. They may not be using the same seed again in the next crop because the technology, terminated technology may have ended the growth pattern of that seed that they have used for one time. The second one is important, is access to the technology. Poor countries like Pakistan, they don't have resources to have that technology. They will be, begging to the developed world for technology. So that is what we call it global disparities, rich and poor. between the two. That's another issue that we have to understand. And small-scale farmers may suffer because they may not be able to buy it. They have small land holdings, and in the surroundings, all GM crops, and that's the issue, ethical issue that we need to address. Another one that is important, specifically when we talk about ECO region, is the cultural and religious perspective. Cultural values, some of the countries, they have their cultural values. They don't want to, for example, eat in, let's say, the Muslims, they don't like to eat pork. So if you have some part of the gene or a portion of the pork even, they will hate to eat it. Religious beliefs that they have, that they don't want to have certain species genes to eat. For example, you may have a vector, part of a gene of the, when you use transgenic plants. And so the same is true for consumer rights and informed choices, labeling and transparency. Do you write the same thing? What minor part of the gene construct had been used, etc., etc. And long-term health and safety. How you ensure that maybe in 1-2 generations or 1, 2, 3, 5 years it is okay, but for long term, if you use a GM crop, it may have consumer rights and informed consent. These two options, labeling and transparency, is allowed. Environmental justice, environmental impact on vulnerable communities, the communities that they don't have resources and things available for them, they may suffer. So that is the issue that we need to talk about. Now, what should be the regulatory agencies and framework? Transparency and public engagement, two things. For transparency, the regulatory agencies are expected to publish all the information related to GM application. Its assessment, its risk, its precision, etc., etc. And that transparency includes labeling of GM product, allow consumer to know everything about it. And the public engagement, if I talk about, is that public is involved in all the decision making by the regulatory authority. They have consultations with all the stakeholders, be the businessmen, be NGOs, and that they have to have a balanced decision. And if I give you some examples of the regulatory framework, number one is the European Union. They have tripartite of system of approval. The first one is European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, that gives its recommendation to the European Commission, send it to the European Parliament and Council for approval. So this is a sort of a mechanism. And there are individual countries. I take example of Pakistan. We have national competent authorities to work on it, and the national parliaments have the authority to have laws for such, things that we have. Now, the last slide for you is the future direction recommendation from my side on 3 aspects. First, for policymakers, for researchers, and for all other stakeholders. What kind of direction I would wish for them to follow. For policymaker, number one and the topmost is strengthen regulatory framework. 2, transparency and public engagement. Keep public engaged for any decision that you take. 3, science-based decision you make. Ask some proof for it that whatever you decide has good standing and has good impact on all the stakeholders. 4, they ensure labeling and transparency, traceability, that the label, whatever it says, it has all the, even the minor things that are related to GM crops or GM organisms. So that labeling and traceability has to be checked by the policymaker. And the last one is monitoring and post-market surveillance. They should have a system mechanism in place that they check and monitor in the market what's happening, either directly with the GM crop or its product. Now for researchers, I ask them to do 3 things. 1, rigorous safety assessment. Their lab, their things should have regular safety assessment. Their research should be what I call a transparency in research. That whatever they do, they should not, have sort of a plagiarism, falsification, and fabrication. They should not fabricate the data. They should keep all the things public. And lastly, which I'm really unfortunately saying that not scientists usually have public outreach and education system available in their institution, university. They are restricted to their lab. They never go for communicating science with the society. So we should be doing science with them for the society. The last one for all the stakeholders, including NGOs, individuals, consumers, everybody. First, ethical and responsible practices. 2, consumer education about all this product. 3, collaboration and dialogue with stakeholders, but internationally too. You may be transporting, you may be shifting from one place to another. 4, support independent research, help them. And 5th, advocacy and policy engagement. We all scientists should be doing that. Lastly, we will succeed if we all work together. Look at these ants how they succeed crossing a bridge. I request all OIC region scientists, policymakers, and everybody that we work together, we can achieve our goal. So if you're talking about the future, what John Shaw said, future is not some place we are going to, but one we are creating. The paths are not to be found, but made. And the activity of making them changes both the maker and the destination. I would say thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, specifically Babak, his colleagues, for inviting me to send you this presentation. I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you very much, and Khuda Hafiz.